Today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite mobile application for landscape photography. It's called Gaia GPS. It is a global positioning system mapping application that is 100% free, and you can download it for both iOS and Android. How did I find out about Gaia GPS? Well, long story short, a little over a year ago, I was out photographing sand dunes at White Sands National Monument in New Mexico. And if you've never been there before, it is this fantastic dune field. It's something like 250 square miles of this brilliant white gypsum rock that is just spread across this flat, barren landscape out in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico. So of course I had to go photograph it. And I flew out there about a year ago, and I was planning on spending 3 days out in the sand dunes. And if you've ever photographed sand dunes before, you know that in order to find the best dunes, the ones that don't have any marks on them, any footprints, anything like that, you really have to hike away from the touristy areas. You have to get away from the parking lots, the visitor centers, all of that. You have to hike deep into those dunes and get away from where everyone else is in order to find those beautiful, perfect dunes that are just so awesome for landscape photos. So on my first day, I hiked out there, and I hiked probably a good 3.5 miles, and I got pretty deep out into those dunes. And it was awesome. I mean, it was so beautiful. You're just surrounded by this wall of negative space everywhere that you look. And then everything changes at blue hour. Blue hour was incredible. I mean, I had never been out there before. And what happened was that you had this blue magenta light in the atmosphere, and it bounces off of that white gypsum rock underneath. So anyway, so I'm out there and I'm totally getting caught up in the moment, and I'm not paying attention to the time. And frankly, for whatever reason, I wasn't really thinking about the fact that the sun was setting and that within minutes it was going to be dark. And when I say dark, I don't mean dark like dark in a town or city. I mean dark. And when you're out there in those dunes where everything looks the same, for me at least, it's pretty easy to get disoriented and to forget which direction is going to take you home and which direction is just going to carry you further into the dunes. So on the second day when I went back, I decided there was no way I was going to repeat that same experience from the first day. I Googled around, I looked for a mobile app that might be able to help me out, and it was then that I discovered Gaia GPS. So I'm going to demonstrate the app, and I'm going to show you how I used it when I was out there on that second and third day at White Sands. Okay, so we're in Gaia GPS, and I think the best way to kind of describe Gaia GPS would be to think of it as being like digital breadcrumbs. It's an incredibly simple app to use right out of the box. All you do is just launch the app, and when you're in the map here, you just come up here to the top right-hand corner, and you'll see this record button. You just tap on that, and when you tap that, Gaia GPS automatically begins tracking and recording your GPS coordinates over time. So as you move and as you're hiking, Gaia GPS is tracking your coordinates and is saving them in the background. And that data is saved as what Gaia GPS refers to as a track. So I'll show you a couple of tracks here. So on my second day at White Sands, the track that I created was the red one down here at the bottom. This was kind of like more of the southern end of the dunes. And again, I started over here where you see, this parking area. And then I hiked, all the way out here to the west. That was, that was probably about 3.5 miles. And it worked perfectly. Like, it was amazing because, not only was I able to tell where I was at all times, but I was able to see how to get back to where I started from. So anyway, I hike back and everything is good. And then I come back for a third day, and that's what this purple track is up here on the northern side. The reason this is interesting, I think, is because when I went back on that third day, I decided that, I saw everything I needed to see down in the southern end. I feel like I found everything that was worth shooting on that day. And I wanted to see some other areas. And so by using Gaia GPS, I was able to see which areas I'd already been to. And so I intentionally decided, well, I'm gonna hike up here in the northern side of the dunes and avoid this whole southern area. So I just started hiking and I was able to look at the app and tell, whether I was, getting close to where I was before, whether I was repeating my steps. So you may notice here that all the way over here at the western edge of this purple track, the one that I created on the third day, you'll see a little waypoint here. Now this is what I was referring to earlier about using Gaia GPS as a creative tool. And I'll explain what I mean. So if I tap on this waypoint here, you'll see that it's a photo. So you tap on the information icon there, and there's a photo that I captured using Gaia GPS, and then Gaia GPS saved this photo to my track as a waypoint with its own GPS coordinates and everything. So if later, if I was to return to the dunes and I want to go back to this exact location and photograph that spot again, I could just, come up here and tap on the ellipsis and tap this guide me action here, and then it'll create a route for me to get back to that location. Or if I didn't want it to guide me, I could just follow the exact same track that I created the last time I hiked out there. And at all times, I'd be able to pull out my phone, look at it, and see exactly how to get there. So it wasn't really until later when I started using Gaia GPS more on future trips that I really started thinking about that waypoint and how I could use that creatively. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. The blue line that you see here, that's my track, and that's what I recorded. Those were my breadcrumbs that day when I was hiking. And as you can see, I kind of went a little bit crazy with the waypoints. But what I was able to do was that I was out there in the middle of the daytime when the sun was terrible. The light was just super harsh. It was directly overhead. And what I did to make use of my time was I just hiked all over this area and I snapped, photos using Gaia GPS of anything that caught my eye, any location, any subject, any vantage point, anything which might prove to be a good photo in more accommodating lighting conditions. So I just went around and I took all of these photos, and it was awesome. And it was a great way to spend the afternoon and to be planning out what it was that I wanted to be shooting later once the sun went down. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of waypoints all in one area. And so what you can then do is you can say, well, I'm gonna go and I'm going to shoot these locations on this day, and then I'm gonna come back another day and I'm gonna shoot these down here. It's just a really smart way to prioritize your time and to be figuring out what locations you wanna shoot so that you're not just running around and fumbling around, out in the middle of the desert and you're not exactly sure what it is you want to photograph next. This is just a really convenient way to, plan what it is that you want to capture. And then when you're done, you just follow the track back, to where you started from, which I have to say, I remember this hike and it was actually really, really helpful because it was dark out there and the trail wasn't particularly well marked. It wasn't a national park or state park or anything. This was like in BLM territory. And so I was able to get back to my car without any trouble, which was obviously fantastic. So let me show you another example. This is one that I created a few weeks ago when I was out at a place called Goblin Valley in Utah. And it's this just massive field of hoodoos. You may remember a story like a few years ago about a Boy Scout troop leader who pushed over a hoodoo. Yeah, it was at Goblin Valley. Hoodoos that are, by the way, millions of years old, so yeah. And what you can see, all the way down here at the southern end of the valley, you'll see, this final waypoint out here. I was able to, look at that waypoint and, think, okay, so I'm going to start there. I'm going to hike all the way out to that location first, just, go through everything that I saw before, photograph that first, and then as, the sun starts going down, incrementally start hiking my way back. And as I'm hiking back, I just hit up each one of these waypoints. And so by the time I reached this final waypoint up here in the north, I was very close to where I started. So even though it got just completely dark while I was out there, I was able to get back really easily because I was just right next to where I started from. So in general, it's just so useful because then you always know where you are, you always know how to get back, you're able to take photos along the way and use them for location scouting purposes. And the really cool thing is, and I don't know, I just think this is really awesome to think about, is the fact that a place like Goblin Valley has been around for millions of years, and obviously it looks different in different seasons and different weather conditions and stuff like that. But I could go back here, like a month from now, a year from now, or even like 5 or 10 years from now, maybe even longer than that if I'm lucky. And I could go back and I could, re-photograph some places that I've been to before, especially if I've upgraded camera gear or whatever. Or I could get to locations I wasn't able to get to the last time, like some of these that are over here in the east. I found these and I thought these were awesome, but they were the only ones that were out there that I thought were interesting. And so I wasn't about to spend a bunch of time hiking out to those, when I could make better use of my time by doing these over here on the western side and photograph those. So yeah, at any point I could go back, whether we're talking about Goblin Valley or really any other tracks that I've saved here in Gaia GPS. Now, there is a bunch of functionality in Gaia GPS, which is beyond how I use the product. I mean, you could do things like routes. You can create, routes are basically like tracks, except you create them ahead of time. Tracks are created when you're on the ground and moving. You create a route through through a web browser, and then that data is synced to your mobile app. There's also areas, which is kind of like Google Maps, where you select an area and you're able to download data for that particular area. But again, I don't really use those things. I mean, tracks and waypoints I have found to be so valuable and so useful, and incredibly, it's absolutely free. And I've just so enjoyed using this over the past year. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good sense of what Gaia GPS is all about. By the way, I have written a blog post that includes my 10 favorite mobile applications for landscape photography. Gaia GPS is obviously one of them, but there are 9 others. If you'd be interested in checking those out, I'll link to it up here, and I'll also put the link to that in the description below. If you want to download Gaia GPS and give it a try on your next trip, I'll also include links to download it for both iOS and Android, also in the description. By the way, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to this channel. And the reason I say that is because it really does make a difference. In case you don't know, the way that YouTube works with content creators is that certain features and functionality in the platform are only unlocked when people cross certain thresholds in their subscriber count. And obviously I'm somewhat new to this. I haven't been creating videos very long, so I need to get my subscriber count to particular levels in order to take advantage of additional features and functionality in YouTube, which will help me create more videos in the future, which I plan to do. I'm going to be doing more of these types of videos. I'm also going to be traveling out to Death Valley soon in California, where I'm going to be testing out some new gear when I'm out there, so that's going to be pretty interesting. So yeah, by all means, if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing. It really will make a difference. So yeah, thanks for watching, and also thanks to Gaia GPS for making an awesome mobile app and offering it for free. I think it's just a phenomenal product. I've just so enjoyed using it. So if you haven't checked it out, by all means, download it and give it a shot. All right, so that's it for me. I'll see you next time.